Hey guys, so today we're outside in our front yard. We got a bunch of lavender plants that we got 2 years ago from Lowe's on the TLC section, but they are just about ready to be propagated again. I like to propagate them right whenever I start seeing, new buds coming out. So that's what we're gonna do today. So over here, I've got a regular seed starter, and then over here, I've got a seed starter with a little bit of tree and shrub potting soil. I like to mix it. It just seems to work better with the lavender. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill this up, level it off, and then we're gonna start taking our cuttings. So let's go ahead and fill that up and I'll be right back. All right, now that that's in, I'm just gonna push it around, making sure I get all of them nice and full. All right, so now I had to run back into the garage and grab a quick handful more just because it was a little low on a couple of them. But I didn't want to make you guys go in there with me because my garage is a mess. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here and like this little branch here, I want to cut it right about there. So, I want about a 2-inch section of this thing with that bud. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop off the bud, strip the bottom inch or so to where there's only like 3, maybe 4 of those little leaves left. And then we're going to plonk it right into the thing. So let's go ahead and we're going to cut a bunch of those, and then we're going to go back, strip them down, and then stick them in. All right, so there's the first one we put in. Got a small pile there that I haven't trimmed up, and then this is what we want over here. That one's a little short, that one's a little long, but the trick is to cut them at a 45-degree angle at the bottom, and that seems to help get the roots going really well. I'm not using my gardening clippers on this. I'm using just regular scissors that before I came out here I cleaned with isopropyl alcohol to make sure there's nothing on them that's going to cause mold or fungus, and that's what I find works best. And the reason why I'm doing a whole tray of this is because typically, as long as I do a fairly good job of keeping them moist throughout the, the growth process, I get about a 50 to 75% success rate on this, just because I'm not being the most selective when I'm clipping them off the plant. And I'm really bad about keeping them, at a nice watering level. I tend to overwater or underwater, put them through, monsoon season and then drought season. So the better you are about watering them, keeping them at that perfect, moist soil, but not soaking wet, is going to be better. And I'll show you how to do that when we get inside. But the key to having lavender survive is keeping them in a nice moist soil, but not having it be too wet or go bone dry. So I find that the seed starter by Jiffy works really, really well for this and helps create that atmosphere of humidity in there to really get them growing really well. But I want to go back over here. One quick thing I want to show you is you don't want to pull this one off because it's already spent a lot of its energy creating this bloom and flowering. So you want to try to find them at this stage here, or even a little bit before that, like this one right here. If you look really, really closely, let's see if I can get a good angle on it. The bloom isn't quite fully developed yet, so that means it's still got a lot of energy in there that whenever you clip that guy, it's going to be really great to grow with. So the earlier you can spot the bloom, like that bud starting, is going to be the better chance of success you have. But if you were to try, this one right here, a lot of times I've never really had much success getting them to grow because they've spent all their energy building this long stalk and then that flower. So I highly recommend trying to find ones that are just starting to, grow that bloom, and then snip it and put it in the soil. So my goal with this is to finish out the lavender section here and keep it going all the way over to the fence. So probably won't be done this year, but believe it or not, this is only 6 lavender plants. So if I can get a good crop this year, I think I can get all the way to the fence. Might be a few little holes here and there that I need to fill back in next year, but the goal is, it's December 19th now, have them ready to go in the soil, come April. That way I can just have them instantly watered via the drip irrigation we have in this area. So get them a nice little root basis to where we can have a cool little lavender crop for next year and get this smelling awesome. Over here is some jasmine, and that'll be the next one I do after I finish the lavender. So I've got 2 inside from last year that I just kind of wanted to see, and if I can get them to grow, and they grew pretty well. So I'm going to try to do a bigger crop of those next. All right guys, so I finally finished melting all of our little saplings in there. One thing to note is I didn't water it beforehand because I like to water it after I put them in. That way the soil can compact around it and help hold it in place. The key thing to remember when you water it the first time is that they don't have roots holding them in place like a typical plant. So if you give it any sort of water pressure, they're all going to go everywhere. So I have a 9-function water hose. I like to put it on the mist setting and just slowly turn it on and do it off the side. And just make sure you just really gently, water it in. Otherwise, like I said, they're gonna go everywhere. If I would have went like that right away, a couple of these would have got knocked over. But as you can see, they're all nice and moist now. I'm gonna let them soak here for probably another 2 or 3 minutes to make sure all the water drains out. And then I'm gonna take them upstairs. I'm gonna put them in a window and put the cover on them. And then we'll check back in on them in about a week, because there's a water reservoir on this thing that will help keep them moist for about a week. And then we'll check in and see how they're doing. So really simple to do, nice big tray. So really excited to see how these guys take off and start growing. Why I'm doing a full tray of lavender and not trying to do like a half and half, that way I can get, a bunch of jasmine started and a bunch of lavender started at the same time. And the reason why is typically each plant is going to require a different amount of water, humidity, and they grow at different rates. So that plastic cover would have to come off sooner with the jasmine than it would with the lavender, just because of the growth cycle of it. So the key is if you want to do both, go ahead and get 2 of those trays. They're not that expensive. All right, everybody. So it's been just over 2 weeks now. So let's go ahead and see how the lavender cuttings are doing. So it looks like we got a little bit of fresh growth right here on this one. A little bit of a fall over there on that one, right there. But all in all, it looks like that one's not going to make it. Just kind of curling over and turning brown on me. But all in all, pretty good so far. Keeping them nice and moist. As you can see, I try to keep this top of soil just slightly moist. And the way I'm doing that is with this spray bottle. And then I'm also using the water bottle to keep the bottom reservoir full. And then I'm using this crate to keep the cat from destroying it this time. And then over here is one I started a couple months ago prior to this. That is the sole survivor of the cat that likes to play with everything. So I'll come back in a couple weeks and we'll see how we're doing. All right, guys, it's been a couple weeks since that last update, so I just want to let you guys see the growth on these. So as you can see, a lot of them are doing really well. Looks like we're probably going to lose another one here. All the ones we saw last time are pretty much dead at this point, so I can go ahead and get rid of those. But overall, most of them are doing really well. Some of them have got like a lot of new growth on it. Same thing with this guy over here. So these are looking good. I'm going to leave the cover on it for a little bit longer, because when we put this on, let's see if I can do this one-handed. We're only really touching the tops on this one and this one over here. The rest of them are all still below that, so we just want to keep that greenhouse effect going. And I'll check back in a little bit, probably another week underneath the greenhouse, and then we'll take that off and just let it grow normally. All right, guys. These guys are all that survived. Unfortunately, I forgot to water them a couple times throughout the process, so lost about half the tray. But still plenty of lavender. I mean, that's all I really wanted in the first place, but I just figured if I had extra, have extra. If we need more next year, we can always do this again next year. I've also got another lavender down there. And then I got 2 lavenders here. So we're gonna go ahead and plant those today. They're a little small for what I would typically plant, but I want to go ahead and get the tomatoes started, so I need the tray. So instead of upping the pot size, we're just gonna put them in the ground and put drip irrigation on them as well. So let's go ahead and hop outside and let's get that area set up. All right, we're gonna extend the lavender going this way with those new plants. And something to look out for when you're putting in new plants is how many weeds are there. So they're not very many, so we're gonna wanna put a lot of extra soil in to make that soil a little bit better. So I've got 2 things of garden soil. We're gonna add that in, mix it up, and get started. All right, so these are compression fittings, so you just push it onto the end of the poly tubing, which I've just been cutting with electrical strippers, but you can use scissors or garden shears. And then I'm about to put on the end cap, and it's just got a screw on. That way you can drain the valve at the end of the year and blow out any sediment that might have got inside the line. So screw that cap back on, and we're just gonna push this guy in. Hair's driving me nuts today. All right, so now that I've pushed this guy on, all these fittings I just got at Home Depot in the irrigation aisle. They have all of it. They've got kits, so that's what you'll see in a second. I'll bring out the big pail that I got. This is the kit I bought whenever I first moved in. Got a couple different things in it, so let's go ahead. All right, so for this section, I use these in the other section as well. It's a little stake emitter, and you can adjust how much water it gets by twisting it. And every time you hear a click, that's just up in the amount of water that's gonna come out per hour. There's a chart on it, so all you do to get this to work, push it in. Pretty simple. I'm gonna use the Rainbird hole punch on this to punch that poly tube. It just makes it a little bit easier, but if you don't have one, you can just push it in yourself. It's not the end of the world. All right, I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see it, but right there's the barb, and you just slide it on in. So there's one emitter. We're gonna do one emitter per plant, and we're just gonna stake it right next to the plant to make sure they all get enough water. So let's go ahead, mix up the soil, and then we'll bring the plants down. All right, they're all in. Now just to go back and put a stake near each one, and we're good to go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and use drip irrigation today to water them, and we'll see how they do. I put a couple extra ones. I spaced them out how I liked them, and then some of the weaker plants, I put another one near it just in case it dies. I had like 3 extra towards the end there. So I just kind of threw them in there. I can always move them once they get a little bit more established, but I'd rather them all be right here so I can keep an eye on them a little bit easier than spacing them out throughout the yards, throughout the backyard and front yard. So let's start throwing these stakes in.
Alright, I'm 7 short, so I gotta run to Home Depot and pick that up. I'll be back in a minute.
There we go. Got everybody getting watered. So that should help these guys take off pretty quick. Alright guys, that's end of day 1 of putting mulch and getting everything ready for spring. Got that bottom area, the middle area, and then we still got to do up there, but that won't take nearly as long. And then we've also got the other side mulched. Definitely need to get rid of that mole issue, and then we will be good to get that grass growing again. You can see the mole holes over by that fence, like divider. So the mole's right along that fence and then down by the street. So we're gonna have to get rid of him before we can get this thing looking good, but that looks 100 times better.